Hey, you might think of the American Revolution as one big event, you know? Like one moment in time when everything changed. But actually it wasn't like that at all. It didn't happen all at once. It was more like a build-up of years and years of tension and frustration, like the American. Colonies were doing pretty well by the 1700s. Cities were hopping, trade was booming, there was this new sense of American identity. But there was a big fat cloud hanging over all that. This big dark cloud of resentment towards the British government because they had so much control over the colonies' lives, and that resentment just grew and grew until finally, boom. American Revolution. Now, here's the thing. By the 1700s, the American colonies had been round for a minute. They'd grown and changed. They had their own assemblies, their own local governments. And they were feeling pretty independent. But Britain still saw them as, well, little kids who needed a strong hand to guide them. After the costly French and Indian War, Britain was drowning in debt, and they turned to the colonies for help. And that's when the trouble really started. Britain slapped on all these new taxes and economic policies like the Stamp Act and the Townshend Acts. And to the colonists, it felt like they were being robbed. I mean, they didn't have any say in these new laws. They couldn't vote or anything. They were just like, hey, shut up and pay up. So naturally, the colonists were pissed. They started grumbling. Then they started protesting. The phrase "no taxation without representation" echoed through the colonies. They wanted a voice. In Parliament, they wanted to be heard. Instead, Britain just tightened their grip. They sent in troops to keep things under control and to enforce those taxes. And that only made things worse. In 1773, frustration blew up in Boston Harbor. Remember the Boston Tea Party? Yeah, that was a big turning point. The colonists, dressed as Native Americans, dumped tons of tea into the harbor. It was their way of saying, no, we won't take it anymore. Britain was furious. They responded with the Intolerable Acts, which basically tightened control over Massachusetts and punished the colonies, but instead of making the colonies back down, it pushed them together. Leaders from all over the colonies started meeting together, talking about how they could fight back as a group, and that's when things started to get serious. By 1775, tensions were so high that armed conflict broke out in Lexington and Concord. It wasn't a big battle or anything. There weren't that many people involved. But it marked the start of the Revolutionary War soon. The colonies were fighting an actual war against Britain, and that meant they needed some organization. That's when the Second Continental Congress met. They were like the leaders of the colonies, kind of like a group of friends who get together to figure out what to do next in their game of capture the flag. Except this was a lot more serious. They created the Continental Army and made George Washington its commander. It was a brave move, because technically the colonies weren't even united yet. They were still 13 separate places with different interests. But they decided to put those differences aside to fight a common enemy, and that unity was key to their success. The war dragged on for years. There were battles and defeats and a whole lot of hardship. But despite the tough times, the desire for independence grew stronger. And in 1776, the colonies took the leap. On July 4th, the Declaration of Independence was adopted. It wasn't just about separating from Britain. It was about creating something new, a nation based on the ideas of liberty and equality. It was also a way of saying, we're not just rebelling here. We believe in these things. All people are created equal. Governments get their power from the people, and if a government isn't fair, the people have the right to change it. The war continued after the Declaration, but it wasn't the same. The colonies were fighting for something more than just independence. They were fighting for those big ideas, and those ideas gave them strength. With help from France, the colonies won key battles, and eventually British General Cornwallis surrendered at Yorktown in 1781. The war was over. In 1783, the Treaty of Paris was signed. Britain officially recognized the United States of America. But the real revolution wasn't just winning a war. It was about those ideas, about what the new nation would become. Those ideas didn't come out of nowhere. They grew out of the struggles and sacrifices of everyday people who wanted a better life. The American Revolution was a story about standing up for what's right, about demanding change and never giving up. It's a story that continues to inspire people all over the world. I hope you enjoyed learning about the American Revolution. If you want to learn more about this topic or others, please visit our website. Thanks for watching. See you next time.